Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chu. I serve as mayor of Chinatown, downtown, and resident liaison for the mayor's office of neighborhood services. Again, just want to reiterate that this meeting is being recorded. Tonight, I will be facilitating the statutorily required awareness meeting, Cannabis Community Outreach Awareness Meeting. This is an application by the Green Lady Cannabis for a proposal at 130 to 132 Boylston St. Please note that no decisions are being made tonight. This is just a statutory meeting required by the city and the state before moving on to the Cannabis Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. The proposal then needs to go through a state process before it will be able to open the process. Still open for business. There will be time for question and answers and comments at the end of the presentation. Please wait until the presentation is over before asking questions. There is an open comment period, meaning that if you do not get called out tonight, or if you think of a question that have not been answered, you can reach out to myself or the project team, and we'll work to get to that information. I do ask that all questions be directed towards the applicant and myself only. The applicant will answer all questions related to the proposal to the best of their ability, and I will answer questions specific to the city's process. If I am unable to answer a question tonight, we will follow up with you after this meeting to get the information to you. With that said, I will turn it over to the applicant's team, and I will facilitate the question and answer section afterwards.
Thank you, Chu. Thank you very much. And I just want to make sure it's not just on my end. I think your speech is just a little garbled. I think you might have a lag. So I just want to make sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me one moment. All right. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chu. Thank you, everyone who's in attendance. My name is Leslie Delaney Hawkins. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Prince LaBelle Ty, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, the Green Lady Dispensary, Inc., which is proposing an adult use retail recreational dispensary to be located at 130 Boylston St. I'm also here tonight with Nicole Campbell, who is the owner and operator, and will introduce the full team, as well as my colleague from the law firm Vicente, Jen Flanagan. Again, we are proposing a retail recreational cannabis dispensary to be located at this site. As you will hear shortly, this is a woman, family, and minority-owned business. This is a local business. This is not a multi-state operator. And this is an establishment that has a very positive track record, as well as experience specific to this industry. Obviously, as Chu stated earlier, this is not the end of the process. While we have engaged over the last several months with any number of stakeholders, ranging from our outreach to residents, business owners, elected officials, and other stakeholders, we don't look at community outreach as a checking the box situation. We're here to continue engaging in an honest and open discussion about this proposal. And we look at this as just another opportunity to be before stakeholders, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. And if you'll just give me 1 second, I will move on to our next slide so that I will ask Nicole to introduce the team. Nicole?
Hello, Leslie. I just wanted to mention, I don't think I see the top half of the screen, but I don't see the bottom half.
All right. Well, if you want to introduce the team, I will figure out a way to get this so that you can see the whole thing.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming together this evening for this discussion. I'd like to take a moment to introduce, as Leslie said, our team. My name is Nicole Campbell. This is my husband, Rupert Campbell.
Hello.
We have a long background, which is on our screen right now. We actually worked for 30 years in the chemical fertilizer industry before getting involved in the cannabis industry. We moved on, kind of exported ourselves from chemicals and fertilizers and got involved in the cannabis industry. Part of the reason for that is because we have a family. On my right here is Corbett Campbell. And on another screen, you can see Cleantha Campbell. And Vincent is sitting next to her. That is her fiance. We enjoy the cannabis industry very much. So because of Corbett and Cleantha's and Vincent's interest, we've moved into the cannabis space. Corbett is the manager for the Nantucket store, and Cleantha is the manager for the Newton store. And Vincent has been acting as the project manager to help open the Newton store. We are actually in Newton today, having our post-provisional license inspection with the Cannabis Control Commission. So we rushed from Newton, got back on the island of Nantucket, and we're here tonight to speak with all of you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. So just to provide a brief overview, as we mentioned, this is an established business that has existing locations. So the Green Lady opened their first fully vertically integrated establishment on the island of Nantucket. And what that means to be vertically integrated is that you have to cultivate your own product, manufacture, test, and sell. And you have to provide both medical and retail recreational. So this team, having their first store located on an island where you can't actually transport product onto the island. So they have significant experience in all the different aspects of the cannabis space. Their second location, which is proposed to be at 740 Beacon Street in Newton Center, is going to be opening this summer. If approved, this would be the third location. And we'll get into why they identified this specific location in just a little bit. I do want to note that at this location, we are only proposing retail recreational. There is no cultivation and there is no manufacturing on site. So in terms of the site itself, obviously every site is very unique, and we're not trying to compare Boston to Nantucket or Boston to Newton. This site was chosen for a number of reasons. It is a currently vacant retail site in a mixed use business that is actually zoned for cannabis to be only a conditional use. So this is one of the zones where cannabis is not forbidden. It is also, in addition to being in compliance with all of the school buffer zone requirements, it is in compliance with the half-mile buffer zone in Boston, meaning that it is not within 1/2 mile of either an approved cannabis establishment or an operational retail cannabis establishment. What we are looking to do, again, is strictly retail recreational. We are proposing 7 days a week with hours of operation from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Obviously, that 9 p.m. close is much earlier than many of the other existing businesses, such as bars, clubs, and restaurants in the neighborhood. We are going to be focusing on sourcing our product from a variety of state-approved establishments, but with a specific focus on social equity, economic empowerment, and Boston equity applicants. Again, while this group is not a Boston equity applicant, it is locally owned, minority, woman, and family owned. And I think that is an important distinction. This is not a large multi-state operator looking to come in here. One of the things that was specifically appealing about this is that if we are approved and move forward, in addition to the ability to purchase the commercial site itself, we've also entered into negotiations pending any approvals to also purchase the immediately abutting residential site, which is immediately above the commercial site in this mixed use establishment. Obviously, everyone on this call is familiar with the neighborhood. One of the other appealing factors was the proximity to public transportation. We anticipate that the vast majority of our clientele will come via either public transportation, foot, or bicycle. However, if there are individuals who are driving, there are any number of parking garages in the immediate vicinity that they can utilize. One of the other things that we're going to continue doing that we currently do at our store on Nantucket, and we're going to be doing in Newton, is subsidizing public transportation for our employees so that they're even further encouraged to utilize public transportation as opposed to either taking an Uber or coming and parking. I'm now going to ask Nicole to give a brief overview of the floor plan, and I'm actually going to zoom in just so that you can see what we're talking about as she walks through it.
Thank you. This slide shows the floor plan. The space is actually on 3 levels. Upon entering, each patron is greeted by a staff member who you could think of as a conductor. This staff member will conduct the initial check of the patron's identification and will then direct each patron to either the upper or middle level of the establishment based on the capacity of each level at the time. The conductor will utilize a walkie-talkie to communicate with staff at each level so that he or she is aware of the capacity on each of the floors to know where to send them. The conductor will also monitor the frontage of the store to ensure that there are no lines forming and there is no loitering. The unique layout of this establishment with multiple floors allows the Green Lady to manage the flow of its patrons and prevent queuing in a public way. The layout and operation within the facility will be in compliance with all of the Cannabis Control Commission and Boston Cannabis Board rules and regulations.
Thank you very much. And of course, we are happy to make this presentation. In addition to it being submitted to the city, we're happy to make it available to anyone who has questions. I am now actually going to turn to my colleague, Jen Flanagan from Vicente, who is also a former Cannabis Control Commission commissioner, who is going to discuss our efforts to ensure that underage individuals do not have access to product.
Thank you, Leslie. One of the major points of this presentation and really of the adult legalization efforts in Massachusetts is to ensure that only consumers who are over the age of 21 are going to be able to access the product. As the public health appointee to the Cannabis Control Commission back in 2017, Governor Baker really made sure that the focal point was going to be to make sure that minors weren't going to get this, there'd be no advertising to minors, and that this really was going to be an adults-only facility. The presentation that you see before you today really talks to the experience that the Green Lady has with ID identifications, with out-of-state identifications, given their other locations and their business experience, but also at the same time, their standard operating procedures really speak to the fact that there's going to be visual inspections of these IDs to make sure that the person matches the identification, but also the Veriscan ID to make sure that this ID is not a fake ID. We realize that technology has come far. There's a lot of opportunities for underage minors to obtain this. And really what they've done, and they've thwarted, and there's been no record of anyone who's underage coming into the facility. And we understand that given the location of this proposal, we wanted to make sure and to highlight the fact that while there's an understanding that there's a institution of higher ed close by, their staff stands ready and able to make sure that people only 21 and older are going to be able to go into the facility. At the same time, in the likely event that anyone is in the facility, the person will be escorted out. There's going to be consequences for the employee that allowed them in. But one major component of this as well is that all staff is going to be trained with a responsible vendor training program. And I think having gone through the operating procedures with the team at the Green Lady, they go well above and beyond what the regulations require for the Cannabis Commission and also what the Boston Cannabis Board requirements are. And so you can ensure that this facility is going to be tightly kept and making sure, I mean, with the cameras everywhere, there is no chance of people being able to come into the facility unless they are authorized to do so.
And Jen, do you just briefly want to touch on the seed to sale tracking program in the unlikely event that there is diversion of product?
So the seed to sale tracking program, which we have in Massachusetts, is called Metric, and that ensures that we know where the product is along the line of the chain of command until it gets out the door. So you will know who's purchasing that product. It will be all inventoried. Everything has to be reported to the Cannabis Control Commission. There really is no greater security system, I think, than our seed to sale tracking system, because it really ensures the fact that the products are going to people who have identifications that prove they're over 21, and at the same time, we understand what kinds of products are going out the door. You're able to really monitor that and to really adapt to what the needs of the consumers are.
Thank you very much. So just going, and again, we're not going to read all of this. We know that this is not the first cannabis proposal that anyone here has seen. As everyone here is aware, this is a highly, highly regulated industry. This is not, the regulations require far more than a bar, a restaurant, a nightclub, and even far more than a pharmacy, which is actually housing far more products that could pose a threat. The requirements of the CCC actually are much more stringent for a retail cannabis dispensary than the state's requirements for a pharmacy. So not only will the Green Lady adhere to and meet all the requirements of the CCC and the Boston Cannabis Board, they actually go above and beyond. As part of that, we will be contracting with an experienced security and alarm company with specific experience in the cannabis industry. As part of that alarm system, all points of entry will be alarmed. There will be redundant alarms. All of this will be connected to not just the management team, but also gives us the ability to immediately alert law enforcement should there be any sort of issue. There will be panic, hold up, and related duress alarms. Additionally, the space will be fully surveilled. So inside the establishment, there will be cameras that will cover at all times, 24 hours, 7 days a week, any area in which cannabis is being stored, any area in which cannabis is being sold, your windows, your doors, any area where there could be access or there could be access to cannabis. Additionally, the CCC requires that the exterior is fully surveilled, and that's something that we take very seriously. In addition to ensuring there is adequate lighting so that you can properly view the exterior at all times. Those cameras are on 24 hours, 7 days a week, and they're retained a minimum of 90 days. And law enforcement and any government agency has access to that footage at any time. Additionally, these cameras and the security that we're putting in place helps prevent the kind of quality of life concerns that we know are really important. This team does not view their responsibility as ending when a patron walks out the door.
Plugged in my charger, it's gone.
I think someone just accidentally muted themselves. So we don't view our responsibility is ending when patrons walk out the door. We understand there are significant concerns about public consumption and related concerns. So one of the things that this establishment is committed to doing, and that many in Boston have done very successfully, and in fact across the Commonwealth, is enter into a good neighbor agreement. And what that means is that every one of our patrons is going to sign an agreement that states that they understand all of the rules and regulations of the city, the Boston Cannabis Board, the Cannabis Control Commission, and any of the rules, regulations of law or laws as they pertain to cannabis or cannabis consumption. And that includes loitering, public consumption, and similar concerns, double parking, which we really don't think is going to be an issue here, but those real quality of life concerns. Under that good neighbor agreement, anyone who's found to violate the agreement will be permanently banned. And actually the system that we use to ID individuals is tied directly to our point of sale service. So there will be an active list of anyone who's no longer permitted into the establishment. And that's actually something that we've seen be very successful in these establishments throughout the city. So I won't go too in depth on diversity and inclusion. Obviously, this is again a minority, woman, and family-owned business. So diversity and inclusion is integral to this team throughout all aspects of the business. And that includes our ownership team, our management team, and our employees. As you can see here, we have broken out our hiring goals, and with a focus on underserved communities, underrepresented communities, and those disproportionately impacted by the failed war on drugs. With our anticipated 20 to 25 employees, we're going to be really focused on hitting these metrics. Additionally, we're not just committed to diversity in our hiring and in our internal team, we're also committed to diversity in terms of where we're sourcing our product and also our ancillary service providers. And that's something that is very important to this team. So I'm now going to turn to what we call the heat maps. So as you can see here, this is a map that's based on the census data. One of the comments that we've heard throughout the community process is a concern over whether there's going to be a density of these establishments approved in any specific part of the city. And just to orient you, so the green star is the proposed location. Now, looking to this, the color labeling, it's a little doesn't quite follow logically, but we're working with what the census data put out. So the yellow areas are your highest population density in the city. Your orange are very high, and your red are high. And this is all pursuant to the census data. This is just to give you a little bit of an idea when we're looking at density of similar retail businesses. This map shows you, keeping the green in mind, we are located in a very high population density, adjacent to one of the highest population density areas in the city of Boston. This just shows the number of coffee shops and the density in this specific area as reflected by the population density. This next slide that we're going to turn to shows you the density of liquor licenses. And we actually think this is a particularly informative slide. Anyone who has followed the legalization of adult use retail recreational cannabis knows that these laws were very specifically modeled after the laws that allow for liquor licenses. So again, to orient you, the green is the proposed license premise, and all of these are showing the density and saturation of liquor licenses in the area. The fact that this many liquor licenses exist here is obviously reflective of both the population density and the demand for locations with a liquor license.
Mhm.
And then most importantly, we turn to this final slide. Again, now it's the yellow star. This shows the not only operational retail recreational establishments, but any approved by the Boston Cannabis Board. And as you can see here, there are no approved, not only not operational, there are no approved retail recreational cannabis dispensaries within a 1/2 mile, despite this population density of this location. One of the concerns that we heard, again, was the thought of a green mile or a saturation in certain neighborhoods downtown. As you can see here, there are neighborhoods in downtown Boston that do have a density of cannabis establishments. You see here in the financial district, there's some density. In the Back Bay, there's some density. Where we're looking at here, there is no density. It's actually an underserved neighborhood, especially given the fact that this ward and precinct voted over 65% in favor of legalizing adult use cannabis, which is far above the percentage in support in the Commonwealth, and also above the percentage in support that voted in the city of Boston. When the Green Lady team was looking at potential locations, they were very intentional about looking to places that were underserved. They're not looking to site next to another establishment. This map really emphasizes the fact that we feel this is an underserved community, and that the right operators with the right proposal and the right mitigation plan can meet that need, which is not currently being met in an area that, again, voted over 65% in support of legalizing adult use cannabis. We think that we can do that without any negative impact to the established, to our neighbors, both residential and commercial. One thing, and I will stop sharing, we're here to answer questions. We're here to continue this conversation. One thing, and I think the fact that both Jen and I are on this team is reflective of the fact that we really believe in this applicant. I was the executive secretary to the Boston Cannabis Board. So I was involved in drafting their rules and regulations. I have seen good applications. I've seen bad applications. I've seen applications in the middle. And this is a team, and this is a proposal that I personally, even though I'm not part of ownership, I'm very proud to be a part of this, because I have seen people look at some of these areas and just, again, check the box in terms of community outreach or their mitigation or their community impact plan. And here I think this is a team that has been very thoughtful, not only in where they're looking to site, but also in their outreach, which again has included outreach to higher education and repeated requests to meet with higher education. It's outreach to service providers in the neighborhood, to residential neighbors, to commercial neighbors, to elected officials. And we're not looking to stop there. We are here to continue the conversation. And I think that's something that you don't often see with proponents who think they have their community meetings and they simply move forward. And I think this team, again, in addition to being woman, minority, and family owned, is very unique in how thoughtful they have been in approaching this. And with that, again, we don't look at this as the end of the conversation. We look at this as continuing the conversation, and we are here to answer questions, to receive feedback. And if there is something that we can't provide the information right now, we're here to continue again that conversation and get you that information. With that, Chu, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you to the Green Lady team for that proposal. At this time, we will start the question and answer section of this meeting. I know that you guys had some issues with hearing me earlier. Are we still experiencing the same issues?
I think we can hear you loud and clear now.
Okay, perfect. With that said, let's start the question and answer, the question period. We will do it by hands. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. If you have a comment, I'll call on you as I see it on my screen.
How do you raise your hand? It doesn't show.
If you click on more, 3 dots.
What?
Oh, there we go. We'll start with Jordana.
Hi, taken some notes, so excuse me for looking down. Good evening. My name is Jordana Sheaf Needle, and I live on the top portion of Marlborough Street. I'm actually very happy to hear this proposal and very glad that it's going to be a locally owned certified minority business. 6 years ago, I felt more cautious about it, but I've educated myself and I now fully support this form of plant medicine, and I've actually personally benefited from it. From a business standpoint, many businesses in the neighborhood did not survive COVID. We've seen this with the increase in empty storefronts. I think that this application is presenting a unique opportunity that we should support. And as someone that has had the privilege of working with my family's business, it's exciting to me that a family-owned business wants to operate in the neighborhood and be part of the
As long
neighborhood.
as there's also a judge that is kind of on board to manage the procedure.
Sorry.
I muted.
It also, pardon me, it also seems inevitable that there will be a dispensary in this area. Just looking at the map, we can see this. And I think that a family-owned, minority-owned, and woman-led company is rare in the cannabis industry
There's no
and
more.
in Boston.
I don't know. I'm looking.
Continue muting them as we go.
And I think Jordana might have accidentally been muted during her.
Okay, sorry. I was just saying that a family-owned, minority-owned, and woman-led company is rare in the cannabis industry and in Boston. And if given the choice between a family, local family that's going to reinvest in the community and an out-of-state operator that's going to reinvest their profits in their expansion in other states, I'm going with the family-owned business. So I'm happy to offer my support to the Green Lady. Thank you.
Thank you. The Green Ladies team wants to respond to any of that.
And just thank you so much. You couldn't have said it better. You're right with everything you've said, and about, you know, not being that much representation, you know, from different communities in the cannabis industry. And just thank you for being brave and speaking up. And we really appreciate it. It means a
Thank
lot.
you so much.
Thank you.
I don't have any other raised hands here.
There are some questions in the chat from people who can't raise their hands.
Yep, so I see a question from Paul Wiseman. Paul says, my question is, will customers be permitted to consume marijuana on the new establishment's premises?
Absolutely not. So there is a very strict ban on not just consumption in our establishment, but also public consumption. There is at some point, years down the road, going to be a conversation about social consumption lounges. That is not what this is. And Jen, I'm going to just ask you to touch briefly on that because I know you've been very involved.
I think the most important piece is that the regs do not even allow people to loiter outside. So this is an establishment where you're going to the facility, you're going in, you're getting your product and you're walking away. And I think it's been estimated over the last 5 years or so that it takes roughly 20 minutes from the time of entry until the time you leave. It's not something that you're walking around the store looking for. The bud tenders inside are engaging with you in that conversation, but there'll be no public loitering or public consumption on any premises, including this one.
And that's one of the reasons that, we're not proposing any sort of seating inside for someone to sit down and contemplate their purchase. There's absolutely no seating outside. And one of the unique, as Nicole detailed, one of the unique things about this space is that as soon as a patron enters, we have that dedicated conductor who, in addition to checking IDs, is monitoring and directing patrons to ensure, one, that there's no queuing outside. And because this is a fairly large facility on 3 floors, we have adequate space to house individuals. Although, to be honest, you're not seeing queuing outside in the cannabis industry at this point. Brookline 5 years ago, yes, but because of the fact that in the city of Boston alone, under the law, we have to have a minimum of 20% of the retail liquor store licenses. So that amounts right now to about 56 retail dispensaries. Right. So there is no shortage, as more of these establishments open, of places to go. So you're simply not seeing that queuing, but also having that conductor and having that person right there at the door, we have the ability to monitor. And again, we consider it our responsibility to also be policing in front of our establishment. And that's something that we're committed to.
Thank you.
Folks are having difficulty raising their hands.
Yeah, if you have you can just turn on your camera or turn on your microphone.
I know Rahul is here.
The hand raising is working perfectly for me.
Nancy, did you have a question? Nancy, you need to unmute.
I have 2 questions. The first is the size of this particular establishment. What is the square footage and how does that compare to other shops in the area? And my second question is, who is your target audience here? You're in the middle of a university community, and I'm wondering who you're going to sell to. So can you answer those 2 questions, please?
Absolutely. So Nicole, do you want to talk about the target audience and the square footage? And Jen and I can speak to how that is in line with other establishments.
Sure. I'm not privy to all the other cannabis industry, institutions in Boston, but I do know a couple of things that might be helpful to you. One is that this space is about the same size as our store in Newton, about the same square footage. I do know that Ascend, which is on Friends Street in Boston, they've done a couple of articles about themselves, touting that they're the biggest cannabis store in all of the East Coast or something like that. And they're, I think, over 7,000 square feet, if I remember from the articles I've read correctly. So that's about all that I know about the square footage of other locations. So, and one other thing about the target audience, actually, that's something that I'm very passionate about. Cannabis really appeals to people of all ages, all ethnicities, and all social classes. We've seen that over the years. We've seen you can have people, blue collar workers who just finished a days of hard work, doing electrical or plumbing or construction, come into our store. And you can also see upper income individuals shopping. You can see people of all age groups. It's really goes across all age, ethnicities, backgrounds. And that's one of the things with the history of cannabis is that they significantly arrested and jailed more people of color for consuming cannabis, whereas the statistics show that it is a very diverse subject that people participate in and consume. So that's why they know with the policing records that people of color have been unfairly targeted, because they know statistically that people, of course, across all ethnicities consume cannabis. So it's really,
can you tell me how many square feet your particular location has?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. It's about 3,600 square feet.
And then in this, I agree fully that people of all types and ages use cannabis. But in this location, who are you expecting is going to buy?
Well, we gear the products that we purchase towards all age groups over the age of 21. Obviously, we do not want to see or entice anybody under the age of 21 into our store. They must be over 21. But we have different things. For example, we do a lot of topicals, which people use, for aches and pains, and just you can put on the surface of your skin. We do a lot of sleeping products, are incredibly popular. I think that it's almost universal that people have problems sleeping. And that's some of in our other stores, our highest selling products is sleep aids. So again, I don't really know, for example, who has issues sleeping, but that is definitely one of the most important products that people purchase.
Nancy,
So-
I think to speak to your question is this product's not being geared towards college students, and it might be located near a college institution. But with the legalization of cannabis, we have requirements that it has to be within certain distances from K-12 and from other places. There's no cannabis establishment in Massachusetts that is targeting college students. The mere fact that you can't have certain colors of edibles, you can't have certain shapes of edibles, the mere fact that their advertising isn't allowed really on the outside of the building, that we're not using cannabis flowers in the logos, the fact that you have advertising restrictions, that you can't have things on billboards. I mean, you can't have things that are in local stores having, you pin up a flyer or what have you. This product in this location and every other location is geared towards adults. And it's difficult in the city of Boston because you have a mixture of college campuses, you have communities, you have associations and the like, but the regulations that the Green Lady has to adhere to, you're not targeting college students. And I know that there's always an argument to say, well, we have a college institution here. Yes, and your freshmen, sophomores, and juniors are most likely going to be under 21, while your seniors are not, and that's a difficult balance to strike. The reality is that you're also in a part of Boston that is frequented by many people in the business community, that people are coming and going from the train, that they're on the Boston Common. So what the proposal has and what they're going to do is they're going to market this and target this to adults the way they're legally allowed to. The fact that it's still federally illegal, there's a lot of marketing restrictions that the companies have to adhere to, that the state of Massachusetts or any institution that wants to can't even get close to. And so there's a lot of things that they have to do behind the scenes to conform to certain laws and regulations, that the target's never going to be the college student. And it's never going to be a child or a family with a child or anyone who's in high school or the like. And in fact, the reason why we have the labels on the packaging is to ensure that if people have the product, it came from a licensed dispensary. Because there's been articles in the newspaper that young adults have shown up at the emergency room, and then there's been an influx of people who have overconsumed. And what has been proven is all those products have come from online and overseas. They've not come from the dispensaries in Massachusetts. And so there's great restrictions in place, which in full disclosure, I voted no on the cannabis question. And people like to make fun of me about that all the time because I voted no and then got appointed to the commission. And it was my job to make sure that we had these restrictions in place so that kids couldn't get it and there was no marketing to people under the age of 21.
So if people on the university campus are 21 and can buy cannabis, is there a mechanism to keep that from then going to the younger students who cannot buy it themselves?
Oh, come on. How are they going to do that?
Well, you can, first of all college institutions are drug-free zones. So you're not supposed to have drugs of any kind in a drug-free zone. So whether you're over 21 or you're under 21, it's not supposed to be in your possession on the college campus. There's nothing that a cannabis institution can do to prevent someone in a private residence or private hall giving it to someone else. That we don't have gifting laws. You can't gift it. We don't have discounts available. You're not allowed to do discounts. This is the most restrictive industry in Massachusetts.
Overall
so far.
neighborhood. You look at St. Francis House that we're all.
And I just to follow up on what Jen said, and that goes to the seed to sale tracking, right? If there is something that is detected on the college campus and again, you reach out, not only can we track down and are legally required to maintain this information to whom it was sold, We can tell you when we have their ID scanned in. We can tell you who sold it to them. We can go all, and that's what seed to sale is. We can go all the way back to where it came from, right? So if there is an issue, we're looking to partner with, with people in higher education. If you reach out and say you have a concern, we're happy to give you that information.
And also the Cannabis Commission created a lookbook. So there's a lookbook online that you can see any product that's made in any dispensary in Massachusetts. And that lookbook was created because police officers, school officials and the like were looking to find out what was in Massachusetts so they would be able to easily identify it.
If you don't just mind muting, I believe Randall might have accidentally. But the other thing I think is worth noting, if you are a bar or restaurant, and I'm sure Emerson deals with this all of the time. They're surrounded by bars and restaurants. I know they're part of the beer garden that's opened right across the street. That's a challenge. I'm sure that's a challenge to be dealing with their residents and ensuring that they're not accessing alcohol underage. If you, having been on both the liquor board and the cannabis board, if you get caught selling to or serving to someone who's underage alcoholic beverages, you're going to get a suspension, right? You're going to get a suspension of your license. If you get caught selling to someone underage at a cannabis establishment, you're going to lose your business. That's how highly regulated this is. There's nothing to be gained by selling to someone underage. And when it comes to diversion, that is why we have the seed to sale tracking system and why we want to have productive conversations, right? That's why we want to be partners. But again, this is not in the middle. We understand the proximity. We're sensitive to it. It's why we really want to work with the stakeholders there.
We have to move on to the next question.
Okay.
Ryan?
I think he's muted.
Thanks so much. So I actually represent the One Charles condominiums that's right around the corner from where the establishment is proposed. So my concern is how is it going to be regulated for loitering in the area? How can we keep? We already have a high homeless and transient persons around the area. So we're just wondering how this is going to help control that.
So I think there's a couple of pieces here. There's one, in order to access this establishment, you have to have valid identification. And we also reserve the right to turn away anyone if they seem like they are intoxicated or if there's some sort of concern about whether their identification is valid. Doesn't matter. You could look 80 years old. You're not going to be let in. What we've actually seen is that the security that comes with these establishments has been a positive because there's increased security in terms of cameras, there's increased security in terms of lighting, and there's just increased security in terms of presence in what is otherwise a vacant establishment. And that's something that, coupled with the fact that how highly regulated, and I'll be perfectly blunt, how highly taxed these products are, it's not particularly cheap to be purchasing cannabis from one of these establishments, given the fact that because it is so highly regulated and so highly tested that it's taxed to a significant degree. I don't believe there have been problems with actual loitering around these establishments. And both of my time on the Boston Cannabis Board and representing numerous establishments throughout the Commonwealth, it's just not something that we've seen. And in part, it's because of conversations like this, where we talk about what the best way to make sure that we're not a negative impact on quality of life is.
And there should be no odor because nothing's being cultivated on this on site. It's all packaged when it gets to the facility.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that too. So I actually managed a property that was across from Berkshire Roots in East Boston. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that as well, but at that property, we had a difficult time with people that would drive in and just park along the streets or park in front of the parking garage. And it was very disruptive to the residents there. I know it's a little bit different of a setup here. And you said that because it is so close to, public transportation and because it is a big walking area, we might not have that, but is there specific items in place so that we can discourage people from double parking, from parking where they shouldn't be, in order to keep up with the traffic flow? Because I know that traffic is a very big concern in the area as well.
Absolutely. And East Boston, the Berkshire Root site was actually one of the first to open in the city of Boston. So I also think they had some very unique challenges, especially as you obviously know that street. That street already had issues, right? So that compounded it in some ways, especially being one of, I think, the first to open in East Boston. One of the things that we talked about earlier was this idea of the conductor, right? This individual who's going to be located at the entry and is going to be monitoring the sidewalk, but also things like double parking. And when we talk about that good neighbor agreement, double parking is going to be part of it, or parking illegally. Because obviously that you don't want that for any retail establishment, especially in a downtown neighborhood. So that's something that we absolutely take very seriously and are putting in place strategies to ensure that that's being, that not only is it prohibited in terms of our patrons, but that we're actively working to say, hey, you can't park there, you've got to move along.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Jen and Leslie, good evening. This is Rahul. I'm the owner and occupant of the 4th floor of 132 Boylston Street. This is right above where this proposed site is. And you mentioned about marketing and tracking, right? I understand that there is no intended marketing specifically to kids, but we also know that this is a highly dense, a very high density area, primarily because of 5,000 kids that go to Emerson, right? And a majority of them, if I have to guess, 60 to 70% of them are below the legal age of 21. And we know that these people, they like trying new things, right? And we have a sophomore and we have a senior. So even though there is no intended marketing to this group, but someone walking up and down that road few times in a day, you really don't need marketing, right? It's self-inviting these people. And I worry, how are you going to track the product once it has left the premises? You talked a lot about, from cultivating all the way to the sale, but after the point of sale, it has left. There is no way to track, right, on where that product goes and who ultimately consumes it. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's, you can't track any product once it leaves the store. You can talk about clothes, alcohol, cannabis, what have you. That's the partnership between law enforcement and cannabis industry. And also, quite frankly, it's the public awareness campaign that we have and we created back in 2018, more about marijuana, to really talk to youth about the fact that things could happen to you if you do get caught with it. I mean, what most people don't understand is because this is a federally illegal product, if you get caught on federal charges and you're underage, you can lose your financial aid for 5 years. And a lot of parents don't have that conversation with their youngsters because they don't understand that. But there's an average number of people that get caught on federal charges with this. Just because it's legal here doesn't mean it's a free-for-all. So I think it's part of a bigger conversation to have with students, which we all know that if you're going to college, they're also having, there's trainings on drugs and how to stay safe and how to make yourself aware of what's going on. It's the same thing with this. I mean, we have the same conversations in the city of Fitchburg where there's establishments and there's also a college. And so that's basically a commuter college. And so really it comes down to the fact that the communities have bigger conversations. There's no excuses to be made that none of us can track a product once it's left the place that you bought it at. What we can say is that there are preventative methods that we can have to not let you obtain that product in the first place. You can walk up and down the street 35 times a day, and the way that we prevent a lot of the marketing on the walls or on the outside of the facility, unless you know it's there, you're not going to be enticed to go into the place unless your curiosity gets the best of you. There's no cannabis plants in any of the logos in Massachusetts. They're not allowed to have that. You're only allowed to have the name on the building. You're not allowed to have any other fanfare with regards to the building or the business. So people like to compare cannabis to a lot of the other businesses in Massachusetts where you can have posters up and you can have bright colors and you can do all these things. I usually compare dispensaries to like a high-end shoe store. They're very minimal. Things are locked in the cabinets. You can't see inside. There's no windows. And so unless your youngster knows that it's there and tries to get in, then there's no way to track it once it leaves. That becomes a law enforcement issue.
Yeah, no, I understand. And, I support a capitalist economy. I support women, minority-owned businesses, but frankly, I think this is a horrible location for something that you're trying to do here, especially given all the surroundings here, right? And I look at society at the large. We would never send our kids to a college that has a cannabis dispensary right smack in the middle of the campus with a dorm on the left, cafeteria on the right, more classrooms behind it, right? I think just the location of it right in the middle of Emerson College is not ideal for that. And I do have some other concerns, obviously being the resident on the 4th floor in terms of the building layout, the elevators, they open directly into the 4th floor and into every floor for that matter, right? And just the odor that it will create and transmit into the unit, the traffic, any cash that might be left there. So I'm not in favor of this proposal.
No,
And I appreciate the comments. I think you're one of the perfect example of why this question passed 4753 in Massachusetts. And as the Cannabis Commission had to strike a balance to place these establishments.
Kate Crofter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I've been working with the Green Lady on community outreach, and someone who was here earlier asked me to pass along their statement. They're just returning from travel and jet lagged. My name is Susan Sheaf and I live on Boylston Street. So she's just 1 block up. My husband and I ran a family business together for many years. I understand how challenging and rewarding it is on the path to success. The Green Lady has shown themselves to be successful operators on Nantucket, and they have also achieved approval in Newton. I feel that it would be a privilege to welcome them to Boston. They are clearly invested in customer education in the neighborhood, and she is happy to support the proposal.
Thank you. Alexandra.
Hi, I am also a resident here over at 1 Charles, and I wanted to just make a few comments about some of the points that you were making for your choice of location, and then I just wanted to ask you a question as a follow-up to that. When you, Leslie, pointed out that there were so many liquor licenses associated in the area, those liquor licenses, if you look at the neighborhood, are associated with food. Right? The current one where we have the beer garden at the corner of Boylston and Tremont, that is associated with, that's in collaboration with Emerson College. So they're controlling that. So there's a difference with regard to the student, what the student population can do and cannot. So I just wanted to point that out to you because I'm not sure that you understood that. And then also you talked about, the 65% voting for legalizing cannabis. And I think you may not understand why someone would vote to do that. It's not that maybe they want to use it, but as noted in earlier conversation or earlier point by Nicole Campbell, the people want equity for all. So why would you penalize someone for, whatever it is, an ounce or whatever it is? So this was the motivating factor. It wasn't that people want to go out and smoke pot or do that. They want to equalize the field in the sense of, hey, this isn't fair for some, so let's make it fair for all. With regard to the neighborhood, and I understand that there has, I'm not sure if I understand this correctly, but from the conversation where it said, who is your target audience? And if you're I didn't get the feeling that there was a business study to say these are the exact people that we're targeting. Because, for example, I'll give you an example. You have Emerson College there. So what are the little stores that pop up around it are the ones that are servicing them. When the transportation building was in full swing, so the transportation building, not all the people have come back to the office, but when they were in full swing, the Starbucks that was there was servicing them. They had to go, they stopped, they went out of business because they weren't able to service the clientele anymore. So when you look at the neighborhood, right, you have an historical park across the street so that people come and they do, if you're not familiar, they do tours in there so that you have tours come in, they have people dressed up and they take them for a tour around there. So when they're coming there, you have this historical nature that people are attracted to this area because of the history. Then on one side, you have, of course, you have the dormitories, which as it was noted before, the dormitories are for people under 21. Let's just be quite frank about that. And then you have high rises, and I'm in one of them with children, right? So with my children, when we were walking around, so if you're not familiar with this neighborhood, and it was brought up by Ryan, we do have a lot of, we'll call them flagrants. Either they are coming from the St. Francis house or they are taking the tea and they are begging on the streets in the area, or they're shooting up because somebody has, you know, an exchange needle programs nearby or whatever. So with that known, right? And you're saying to us that you want to target all peoples, but you have to know who the people are in this area, right? So if you don't know who these people are, this is more of a family area, although we have the park and we have the college next to us. These are families. So then I want to make, and here's my question, because Jen stated that this cannabis is high end, like a high-end shoe store. Well, then why didn't you choose the Peru instead of here? Because this is a family area. Why wouldn't you just go to the Peru if it's a high-end store?
We appreciate your comments. I'm not really sure there's anything to respond to there.
Thank you. Next question is David Spriggs.
Thank you very much. I just spent a couple of hours last week at the neighborhood safety meeting. The downtown neighborhood has been increasingly concerned about quality of life issues in the downtown safety. The Chulan and a variety of others were there conducting this meeting with 13 members of the 3 members of the police department, a variety of representatives and so forth. But one thing became very clear there, that there are many quality of life issues in the downtown area, including the concentrated homeless area, the concentrated cannabis stores already in place and approved, but not yet open. And it was also clear that the police feel uncomfortable and unable to ensure to enforce any quality of life laws. And so one of the things that comes out of this is that once you sell cannabis to anybody in your store as legally as you want, they walk out the door. It is not up to the police to take care of it. The police do not enforce quality of life issue. The police are quite clearly, and they stated this at the safety meeting, concentrating on violent crime in this area. They're not concentrating on keeping people from smoking cannabis in the common. They're not interested in small drug deals. This is, at this point, once this cannabis is sold, and whether it's sold to a senior in Emerson College or anybody else, and they walk out that door, you wash your hands of it, the police have washed their hands of it, and those of us who live in the neighborhood are stuck with the results. And you don't even have to respond to that. I think that speaks for itself.
Thank you. Bill Bunce.
Well, thank you for bringing that up because I have the same concerns. I'm the general manager of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and Residence. I have 348 residential units. I also have Spruce Street Nursery. That's a tenant of ours. So I'm not sure if we've looked at that and the distance of the nursery school. But I will say, from a business owner that has to deal with customers constantly complaining about the Boston Common and the smell of cannabis on the Boston Common and how it affects them coming to and from the hotel and their overall impact of their Boston experience. We already have cannabis in this neighborhood. My residents use it. I know that they go to the one that's down the street from us. I don't understand why there's another one needs to come into this dense area. And if you look at the map of density, I'm right in the smack middle of it, of the area that we're talking about. And I just think that location-wise, I don't think this is the best location for us, and certainly impactful to the hotel and to the residents and everything else everyone said about the neighborhood and location. So, you know, I applaud that it's a minority-owned, women-driven business. I just think the location is not ideal for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maggie Schilling.
Hi, yeah, so I joined the meeting late, but I just want to comment because it seems like there's a lot of concerns about the location. I also live around the corner from the proposed location. And, you know, I understand the concerns with young children, and I don't have children of my own, so I can't quite comment on that. But to be honest, a lot of these cannabis stores are the signage is not as flashy as signage for a lot of other places. They tend to be very discreet and covered from the places that I have passed by in Boston. Sometimes you really even have to like focus on the sign to understand that it is a cannabis dispensary. And I'm just going to be honest, there are some really, you know, way more obvious and not discreet storefronts in the neighborhood. There's a smoke shop down the store that has, I'm just going to be frank, it has these glass bongs sitting in the window. It's gross. And I mean, I wouldn't want my kid walking by that, but if we're talking about a legalized cannabis dispensary that's going to be very discreet and have, you know, there's usually a police officer, a security guard at the doorway. It's very discreet. You walk in, you go in, there are limits on what you can buy. I guess somebody's commenting right there. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I don't think the business hours matter. Like when I walk by that smoke shop that's right near La Belle Nails, I think that's really gross, and like it's not discreet. It's right there. I mean, there's also a cigar store right near the trolley station, near the Boloco on the corner. Like I don't think the argument that you know, the location and the fact that they're, you know, that's going to make such an impact on the community. I just disagree. I personally disagree with that argument. I think there are so many other places that are way more, you know, in your face, not discreet. Maybe you could argue inappropriate for children to see. And yeah, and the other thing I just will add is a lot of the storefronts on that street where the proposed location are, they're empty. I mean, I would much rather see a thriving economy in the neighborhood where people are buying goods and, you know, paying tax dollars that are going to be refunneled back into the city. I would much rather see that than see all these empty stores, these abandoned stores. And I think a lot of that's product of the pandemic, but we see a lot of that there. And quite frankly, I think it's made our community sad. If we're talking about a cannabis dispensary that's going to be discreet and have discreet signage, I don't think that's as big of a problem.
Thank you. I have Robert and then Margaret.
Yeah, hi, this is Sergeant Slocum with the Emerson College Police Department. I'm also here with Robert Miller, who's our detective. Obviously, we got all sorts of issues going beyond, you know, as far as Clery statistics. You know, there's going to be word of mouth, obviously, between students. And I keep hearing all about advertising. There's going to be this, and there's not going to be signs that the students are going to tell each other, hey, guess what's around the corner? Hey, do you want me to pick you up something? But I'm not even going to get into that because that's further down the road. I heard something about as far as the establishment themselves doing like community type policing on their behalf, as far as, assuring cars aren't double parking, making sure people aren't loitering. What is your plan for actually enforcing that? Because people tell us as police officers to go pound sand when we tell them to move their car. So how are you expecting to tell people, hey, you can't stand here. Hey, there's too many people here. Hey, there's crowds coming by. Hey, please move your car. What is your plan for that?
Thank you, Sergeant. This is one of the reasons we've reached out and asked to have a one-on-one meeting with Emerson a few times. Obviously, we were asked by the mayor's office to reschedule this to allow for the new president to come in and get brought up to speed. So I know we've reached out again, asking to meet and have this conversation in a more productive fashion. And we do hope that we can get that on the books sooner rather than later. But again, no, we're not law enforcement. We completely understand that. And that's what goes back to the good neighbor agreement and banning customers, right? You're absolutely correct. We cannot prevent someone from pulling up. We can't force them to move. We can ban them from our store. And we can ban them from our store if they're loitering. We can ban them from our store for any reason we would like to. And I think when you look at these establishments that have opened and operated now throughout the city, you're not seeing the parade of horribles. I think it speaks to the fact that these are well-regulated establishments, that not only did the city of Boston stop taking the 3% community impact fee, they actually gave back all of the money to the establishments that are operational, because there was no impact other than what a normal retail establishment would create. So we're here to talk through it, talk about what policies and procedures we have in place. Again, we know not everybody is supportive of this. We know not everyone's going to be supportive of cannabis on the whole or this location. I think we've detailed why we think this is a good fit. The underlying zoning does allow for it with a conditional use permit. This is not a variance. And again, we want to be here to have a conversation.
My other question would be, as far as public safety is what time would your store being stocked at? And is the people that are stocking the store bringing in stock? Are they carrying firearms? Or are they armed? Is there private security? Because that becomes another issue.
No, so we have security staff, but the CCC and the BCB are very clear. They do not want to see armed security. That is not something that we're looking for. Unlike a restaurant or a bar where your closing hour, in this case, we're proposing a 9 p.m. closing hour. With a restaurant or a bar where you have that half hour to an hour where patrons kind of finish up their business and leave, you don't have that with cannabis. It is at 9 p.m. or whatever your closing hour is approved for. All patrons have to be out. There's no holdover period.
I'm more concerned about when is actual deliveries being made. Would that be in morning? What hours? How many people are doing the deliveries? Or, there's some sort of security presence during deliveries.
Yep.
We do have some, as other people have mentioned, regular transients in the area that will not necessarily even trying to necessarily take your product or steal your product, but will get in your face just because you're there at a certain time of day.
Absolutely. So under the CCC's regulations, all deliveries are randomized and they're within certain hours. And in addition to them being randomized, the vehicles in terms of delivering product, but also picking up cash, there are very strict regulations about being cameraed, having secured vaults. We're happy to kind of share. I know don't want to go into all those details right now, but we're happy to share all of those regulations with you and how, what our proposal is in compliance with the CCC requirements. But again, the requirements are very stringent in how these deliveries and pickups are handled, as well as how the entire facility is alarmed and secured.
Okay.
Thank you. Peggy?
Yes, hi. So many things have been said today. I'm Peggy Ings, and I am the Vice President of Government and Community Relations at Emerson College. And I want to say how proud I am of the community we live in and that we thrive in, and that we have the best of a community, probably, maybe, am I a little biased? Of course I am. In the entire area. We have 3 historic districts right around us. You're sitting in one of them right now. And that is the Piano Row Historic District. And this building happens to be a contributing building in it, in case you don't know. Mass Historic Commission signifies this building. Boston Landmark has a significant number for this building. So just so you know, you're sitting in the Boston Common Garden Protection Area, which is also a Boston landmark. So just to sort of familiarize you folks who are coming into an area that all these folks are here to talk about, who are seasoned, who are residents, who care for this area, who brought it back from the adult entertainment district. That, you notice, isn't in this, but it's still a district. We have 4,000 kids, and they're kids. You all know they're kids. They're a targeted audience. And Attorney Flanagan pointed out that they could lose all their federal funding if they were caught. They would lose their aid. Is there any kind of thought about that? No, of course not. It's only about we have to have a balance. We have to do this. And furthermore, the building you're putting it in is a condominium building. You heard from Raul. Do you know that their condominium documents didn't even allow a package store? Didn't allow a restaurant? It's in their condo docs. Now, granted, a long time ago.
With all due respect, I don't think you're here to speak for the condominium. Again, we've reached out multiple times requesting to meet with you and your team.
No, it's not about me. It's about what's the truth. The truth is that building was stipulated to be a family-owned building. They have more than that on it, and you should probably read their condo docs if you're representing the owner of that place. Also, I'm very happy that Alex spoke on what it's like when you go in and out on Boylston Place. There are people sitting on benches out there. There are children in a daycare, in the Transportation Children's Center, that have their playground outside on top of Boylston Place. Those are 5-year-olds. 5-year-olds. I spoke to the director. She's writing a letter. She is absolutely stunned when I told her what was going there. She said, no, nobody would ever do that. I think maybe if you put that high-end shoe store in, we'd all be happy. Everybody loves shoes, so that'd be great. You also stated in bold letters, this is a 21-year-old establishment. So there's more of our kids than was mentioned that are less than 21. How do you not see this as your targeted audience? I think it's very dishonest to say you did not target this population or this area. You know, there are clubs in this area as well. Yes, and you know, you want to use the beer garden against Emerson when we had an RFP process and the city of Boston is a partner in that. Yes, we managed that because the city knew that Emerson would let it be operated in a very, very, very safe manner. Now we turn around after expending over $900 million to clean up an area and have every other person follow, every other development, every other unit that's on Boylston Street get built. And they always say, if Emerson College didn't move here, we all wouldn't be here. They took the biggest risk of coming down to this area. But furthermore, I just want to say that I'm sure Governor Baker didn't expect to see a recreational pot shop at every entrance to every building. You step out of that dispensary, you step on to Boylston Place. You step to the right, you go to the Emerson apartment building. You step to the left 4 feet, you go into their dining hall. We have 13 programs coming into the alley, coming into all our dorms this summer. They're handicapped kids. These are kids who are volunteering from all over the world to work in Chinatown. We have the SEALs from the US Navy. We have 13 programs, and their ages 12 to 19. Now, we're going to talk semantics that, oh, it's not educational. The majority of them are. And if that's going to be a semantic argument that, oh, well, it's not K through 12. You think anybody's going to come back to this area to go to summer programs when they have a recreation pot shop right there? Optics, tours, parents. The woman on Marlborough Street, I have nothing against, believe me, having a location that isn't embedded in a college for a recreational entity. But this is not the location. And it is, I'm sorry to tell you, all about the location. And this is not a balance. This isn't a balance.
I appreciate your comments, and I think for clarification, Governor Baker didn't expect anything. This was a ballot initiative that was passed by the citizens. And so the legislature was forced to deal with the issue, and the Cannabis Commission was created to ensure that the voter initiative was implemented in the state. I appreciate your comments and your concerns. I totally understand where you're coming from. I don't think it's as confrontational as it's coming off to be. I think this is what part of the process is the conversations. You have a population and an institution that you work for, and that they have some really strong values and beliefs, and we understand that. But at the same time, like I said, it's a balance. And so I just want to clarify that this wasn't an initiative by the governor. This is a ballot initiative by the people of Massachusetts.
It's an imbalance. You are targeting 4,000 students.
Okay, so I'm going to just stop this, Ms. Ings. I hope that we can get a response on our request to meet so that we can actually have a conversation, but
I think that would be a great idea. When you change the location, we can meet. Thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're not willing to meet with us.
There's nothing to say. We said it.
Okay, no, appreciated.
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any further comments?
Yeah, I just like to add, college students are going to get weed no matter where, like where it is. They're going to get it no matter what. To be quite honest, I think what's more unappealing around Emerson is the empty, abandoned storefronts that quite honestly.
There are no abandoned storefronts, Maggie. I didn't want to call you out on that before. We have full capacity. There is not, we do not, the only storefront that's abandoned is the one that wants to put this recreational shop in. So take another walk down the block. Nothing is empty.
And, you know, I have to say that, I have to say that, you know, we lock our cars, we lock our houses, right? It's making things difficult for someone who's trying to break in or a thief to take away the car, right? So I feel like saying that the youth and the kids are going to get caught regardless. I think it's a losing argument, right? So putting smack in the middle of 4,000, 5,000 students and making it easily accessible to them, we are inviting them, right? We are inviting them, and we will see the effects in generations to come.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions?
Well, I got cut off, but yeah, I'm sorry. So no, I mean, they're okay. Maybe I shouldn't say abandoned, but they're quite unattractive. You know, I walk down there actually all the time, and there are plenty of storefronts that almost are never open. I'm not really sure even what these businesses are. I'm not sure.
I think you had the wrong street. Every one of those buildings.
Margaret, I do have the right street, and I don't like, I'm just trying to make a comment.
What's empty? Tell me what's empty.
On my experience, there's a bazaar.
Not true.
Excuse me?
It's not true. I'm telling you honestly, I'm not trying to be weird about this. I'm trying to tell you, every one of the commercial spaces on that street are occupied except for this. Honestly, we're all the way down to Boloco. Every one of those are occupied, Maggie. I'm telling you. There's not an empty space among them.
Okay,
One
well,
black in the window.
I just corrected myself as, okay, this is an open meeting, first of all, so please let me make my comment, okay? You've been interrupting. I actually did correct what I was saying. I was saying they aren't necessarily empty, but there are some that I noticed that are almost never open. There is I don't even know what you would call it, I guess, to use goods store, or there's a lot of like records and things in the windows. I almost never see it open. I'm always wondering what it is. There's actually right across that alleyway from Boloco. I don't ever see anybody going in and out of those buildings. Maybe there are businesses in there that just aren't, I guess, publicized, or like they're dark a lot of the time, but that's my point. Then on the other side, past the Starbucks, as you go down the nail store, as I said, there's some bizarre, strange businesses that quite honestly have way more unappealing and unattractive goods that they're selling, I would say, than what these cannabis stores are looking like. And I also don't mean to be rude to anybody else in the meeting, but if anybody has ever stepped into a cannabis dispensary, I would just be curious if the people who are against this have ever stepped in it, because they're highly regulated and there's almost minimal signage on the outside. I just don't see how I disagree with it being a very attractive storefront to significantly change the feel of the neighborhood. And if anything, the tax dollars that are going to come out of this could be refunneled back into helping the actual issues, cleaning up the common, helping the homeless population, helping the drug addiction population. These are issues that Boston has to deal with. And quite honestly, what is now a legalized drug, there's no way of getting around it. Like, that's a moot point. It's legalized. This is what it is. If anything, let's use it to good use. Let's get tax dollars off of it, funnel it back into the city to do good.
Thank you, Peg.
Maggie,
Maggie.
can I ask Maggie a question? Because I used to live on Marlborough Street too. So, I mean, Maggie, no one's really saying that like this is a business. We get it. Well, nobody wants to hurt the business. All we're saying is that it's not the right location. So, I mean, would you put up a dispensary next to you on your street? I bet you your neighbors would say no. It's not that. It would be more of, hey, I'm going to go to the mall or I'm going to go somewhere else. And you have to read the room. So because you don't live on the street, you have to read the room. The room is historic and it's a residential area. The people are stating that because we're residents, because we have kids, you don't have kids, we have kids, because we have kids, we're just saying, hey, we wish you guys well. We just don't think it's the right location. That's it. Move it to a business district or move it somewhere else. Move it several blocks away, but not that location. That's all that's being said.
I'm sorry, and I'm just, on behalf of the applicant, I'm just going to jump in here. We're not looking for this to be people attacking each other. This is a meeting where we're presenting, we're here to answer questions, we're here to solicit feedback. I really don't want to see, and I defer to Chu in his office, but I don't want to see people just attacking each other over a presentation that we're making. So we're here to answer any questions, but I just hope we can kind of keep the tone above board.
Again, thank you. Yeah, I do ask that all questions or comments be directed towards me or the applicant themselves. Not at each other, please. Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments?
I guess I just would like to add, I completely understand. I mean, this is not meant to be like egregious at all. Sorry.
We have to wrap up this meeting.
Okay, sorry, you said any additional comments?
Yeah. yeah, we have to wrap up this meeting. We are approaching the 7:30 mark. I have given you a significant amount of time to comment, so thank you. Are there any other questions? Again, just want to reiterate that this is not the end of the committee process. I ask that all future questions or comments, letters be directed to myself and the applicant. I will drop my email in the chat. I ask that all letters of support or an opposition be emailed to me and have the cannabis board CC'd. So I will drop my email in the chat as well.
Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Chu. We understand it's a very emotionally charged topic, and I will also drop my email in the chat.
Thank you, Leslie. And with that said, we will wrap up tonight's meeting. I'll give everybody a second to get both of our emails that are in the chat. Again, do ask that all letters of support or opposition be sent to myself. I will forward the letters of support and opposition to the cannabis board. So thank you again. Thank you everybody for attending tonight's meeting. And have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.